With a title like Things to Come on a channel like mine, it's going to be pretty hard not to make a lewd joke. Yep, pretty hard. Welcome to Exploitation Reviews, and me, Rob, and today I'm taking a look at Things to Come from 1976. This is a low-budget sci-fi sexploitation romp from Texas, of all places. And no, I won't be making any jokes about Texas. In comedy, we don't like to punch down. Sometime after this was released, it was lost and then found and then restored by the fine folks over at American Genre Film Archive, so let's see what they found. After some lo-fi credits set to upbeat classical music, we open on a building. Inside the building, a woman answers the door, a man busts in and immediately rips her shirt off. Naturally, with a nice emphasis on natural, that's nothing you can see here on YouTube.
Man, I just work here.
But of course, we don't have to stay here. You can now support the channel on Patreon and get access to spicy versions of my reviews. Link is in the description. Then there's a shot of this strangely dressed future man. Not sure what that's about. Oh, he's watching this on TV. The TV man ties up the woman and takes off his shirt. I bet you can guess where this is going, and weirdly, the woman seems kind of into it. And the future man thinks this is pretty funny. And in truth, it is pretty funny.
Y'all come back real soon now, yeah?
That was this week's episode of The Forcible Intruder.
If the people in the future find this kind of stuff humorous, then my channel is way ahead of its time. In another part of the movie, a woman wakes up and immediately does drugs. Oh man, the future looks a lot like my past. The woman joins the man in the TV room. She's annoyed he spends so much time watching TV. She doesn't mind that he's watching what she calls porn opera, just that he spends so much time watching it. So her priorities are very similar to my mother's. We learn that this woman's name is Julie, and she's unsatisfied with the state of the world. She's tired of the monotony. All anyone ever does is work or watch violent, sexed-up TV shows. So it seems here that the world of the movie is a bit similar to A Brave New World, where people are placated by things that they love, sex and violence. And I suppose it's also a bit like Fahrenheit 451, in that they spend a lot of time watching TV. So Julie decides to get a divorce, and her husband is totally cool with it. He doesn't seem to care about anything at all, except for his porn operas. After the divorce is taken care of, she decides to go for a walk. Her husband's cool with that. The government, though, is not cool with that, and immediately sends out a police to see what she's doing. Walking while white. I guess the future is colorblind. They don't arrest her, they just check her out since her behavior is so weird. And I hate to defend the police, but walking for no reason at all is pretty weird. When she gets back home, she learns that she's won a trip to the Pleasure Dome. Her friend, who is a member of some resistance movement, gives her a bomb that she wants her to use on the Pleasure Dome's computer. Okay, so that was quite a turn plot-wise. And so 30 minutes into the movie, we've established a pretty interesting world, and we've set up some sort of terrorist plot, and we've seen no less than 6 pairs of plots. Not a bad first act. Let's see what happens in Act 2. At the Pleasure Dome, Julie is assigned a slave called a pleasure unit, which is a lifelike humanoid robot. Okay, so I guess now we've turned into Westworld. And we also learn that it's not all pleasure for the guests at the Pleasure Dome. If they misbehave, like this guy here, they are hunted down by these figures. In this case, they catch their mark, and we see that under the robes, these figures have nice, figures. So the guy doesn't really mind getting caught. Back in the Pleasure Dome, one of the attractions people can watch is a Most Deadly Game type event with motorcycles, where the motorcycle people hunt down and kill some of the pleasure bots. And those pleasure bots end up looking pretty realistic. The technology in the future is pretty great. Julie eventually figures out where the supercomputer is that controls this place, but it's guarded by one of those robed figures. So, will she ultimately be successful and strike a blow against this oppressive society, or are things about to take a really dark turn? Well, that's enough out of me as far as plot goes. Let's talk some highlights. Well, this thing has a pretty great opening. I mean, it sets up the world well, and it sets up the characters, and it introduces an interesting plot, and yeah, that's pretty cool. Plus, it's just kind of cool to see an exploitation take on A Brave New World. That's a book that can do well as exploitation, since a big part of that world is that the people are placated and controlled by sex and drugs, which are things that look fun on screen. Plus, that book itself is just an interesting take on a dystopia. Normally, in dystopian literature, like 1984 for example, people are controlled by what we hate: lack of privacy, lack of freedom, lack of resources. In A Brave New World, people are controlled not by what we hate, but by what we love: hedonistic pleasures. And that is the perfect kind of dystopia for a sexploitation film. And as far as those exploitation elements are concerned, the film does pretty well. At the beginning, we get scenes from some of those sleazy TV shows the people of this world watch. And when things move over to the Pleasure Dome, we get some Pleasure Dome scenes. And it's not just the sexy, we also get a bit of the old ultra-violence.
A bit of the old ultra-violence.
And speaking of A Clockwork Orange, this movie, like that one, benefits greatly from some pretty great classical music. Although I must say that Night on Bald Mountain is a bit overplayed, especially in the exploitation world. I mean, the Olga films relied heavily on that piece, a decade before this thing came out. So we've got the sexy, we've got the music, we've got the ultra-violence, looking pretty good, but the film's not perfect. Like a home invader finding a willing housewife, this thing has some shortcomings. Well, you know how I said the opening was good? That's mostly true. But there is a glaring exception. The underground resistance movement is not introduced well at all, and the writing surrounding that part of the story is awful. On the nose, awful. And despite its name, the Pleasure Dome was kind of lame. They kept talking about these activity rooms, but what we saw was not very interesting. And at one point, the scene was little more than a setup for a really bad joke. And I guess part of the problem with the Pleasure Dome sequence is the movie then relies heavily on following Julie around, and her acting is really flat. And you know what else is flat in this movie? The colors. The whole film has this washed out, low contrast look. I don't know much about the archival work AGFA does. Maybe they were just trying to preserve the film as they found it, but I kind of wish they had added a little more contrast to the image. Just a little tweak to go from this to this, or this to this. That's easy enough to do, but like I said, I'm not an archivist. I don't know what kind of philosophy they follow when it comes to putting these things out. So anyway, what do we say about things to come? Well, it's pretty interesting, especially for a piece of regional exploitation. I admire the effort that went into this thing. There are certainly easier exploitation genres to make than dystopian sci-fi. This thing has futuristic sets and outfits. Sure, they're cheap in that Star Trek kind of way, but cheap is still more expensive than free, like shooting in Doris Wishman's apartment. So props to the filmmakers for making the effort and getting this thing out there. But it also loses a lot of steam through Act 2, and loses a lot of the satirical bite when the jokes take a turn away from biting into something sillier. Silly can be fine, but a joke about a home invader show? That's hard. Very hard.